Okay, well, let's resume with my off-the-cuff additions and comments to Jeremy's 50 Problems with the Mormon Church video here on YouTube. This one's focusing on issues to do with the Book of Abraham, at least to get started off. So we'll see what he has to say there.
Scholars have translated the papyrus Joseph claimed the Book of Abraham was translated from, and found that they have nothing to do with Abraham or anything contained in the book. The church now tries to claim that translate meant get inspiration from. Joseph also penciled in some parts of the papyrus.
Okay, so here we are with Jeremy's first slide here, and so I'll probably keep it light here and focus on certain things. He and others have detailed this Book of Mormon controversy pretty well, and his cite with a rebuttal probably to Fair Mormon's rebuttal might be pretty interesting as well. Again, Mormon think, Dan Vogel, etc. Tanners. Okay, taking a look at that depiction there, if you open it up on LDS.org or in your scriptures, if you're a member or so forth, take a careful look at what we're seeing here. It's the it's the scene that Abraham says he's on the sacrificial table, the bedstead, and then there's that guy, the priest of Elkanah, who's also the priest of Pharaoh, and he's got the big knife in his hand, and he's getting ready to sacrifice him. And as you read, of course, you'll note, if you go to some of these sites, you won't see this information, I believe, on the LDS.org essays regarding this, but this is a common picture, except for the guy's head is not a human head normally in this common depiction, but what it is it's the Egyptian god Thoth, I believe, the dog-headed guy, and he does not have a sword or a knife or machete in his hand. It's about an embalming situation, which is also just coincidentally with the papyri that were recovered happened to do with as well. And as you might know, and LDS.org does admit that that the papyri that have been translated are from like somewhere around the 1st century BC, not 2000 BC, when Abraham was around. But they've got an excuse for that, don't worry. And anyway, there are additional depictions here. I'll just move to the next one. We might hear Jeremy's voice, or I'll which is fine, but it might seem a little disruptive, so yeah. Once again, so this is on the other facsimiles, and I have read some stuff various places, and I think it was with the CES letter too. Then Jeremy went ahead and discussed issues. This is much too small to see anything, but when you have a blow up and you're looking at it, there are many items in there, hieroglyphs that depict various, people or gods, and so on and so forth. And the Egyptologists have translated this, and what Joseph Smith says was, Pharaoh is like Isis, or what he said is a servant is Pharaoh, and what he says is, there's some kind of stuff that's a little bit, shall we say, graphic on there. We'll at least call it more than PG-13, so I'm not going to discuss it, but yeah, Joseph Smith says it's something completely different. And taking a close look at the fellow sitting down, well, he's got something on his mind, and his wife's involved with it. Anyway, the Egyptologists that have taken a look at this stuff and then saw what Joseph Smith said things were pretty amused and so forth. And so what LDS.org, what they did on the essays, from what I've read, is basically ignore the issues that are going to trash them more easily. So they just say, well, there could have been more papyrus. We know there was more, so maybe it came from something that wasn't here. And then, of course, there are people that say, well, right where it's torn, it fits, and so this is what it was from, and that sort of thing. But they ignore the descriptions of these hieroglyphs in these facsimiles. I don't recall them discussing that, and so they focus on something where they have a chance to say, it's just too confusing. You'll have to pray about it. We just don't know. And then, of course, they go on and say, well, maybe Joseph Smith, maybe he just needed something to look at and hold on to so he could get inspired with a direct revelation, and it has nothing really to do with this, so we really don't even need this. It wasn't dependent on it, even if it says that he was translating it directly from the papyri, which happened to be written by the hand of Abraham, and this wasn't written by the hand of Abraham at all. It was much later. But they say, it could have been somebody copying it, like, Moroni abridging it or something. But it gets pretty far-fetched in order to come to the always same conclusion that we just really don't have evidence of one way or another, so we need to just pray about it and have a heartwarming spiritual experience. You'll know it's all good. But contrary to that, we've got these things where Joseph Smith says, the one that's actually Isis is Pharaoh or somebody. I mean, and thing after thing after thing, and it's people like Jeremy go ahead and pencil it out for us, and it gets pretty clear when you look at it. In addition to that, from the papyrus, Joseph Smith went ahead and started taking various hieroglyphs out, various characters, and then giving an English translation of them. And sometimes they would be, many words for one hieroglyph, or sentences, or paragraphs. I mean, it's kind of hard to fathom. And in what supposedly was translated from the papyrus that they have, well, Joseph Smith came up with, in one case, as many as 175 words, I believe, that I read, for one hieroglyph. So that's just kind of on the ridiculous side, isn't it? Additionally, if you look at how long it says he took to translate the Book of Mormon, when they say, okay, well, it really got to it, he did it in like 90 days. Well, so then he's doing like 4 chapters a day translation while he's working on the Book of Mormon. Okay, Abraham, he doesn't, he says he's working on it, and he writes in his diary I was working on it all day and all day. It's only 5 chapters, This is at most 2 days' work if he's doing the same pace as the Book of Mormon. This is Egyptian. They say that was Reformed Egyptian. Why does it take him years to publish something, even when he said he was working on it all day, day after day? That's another anomaly. Maybe that's the wrong word for that. It's just ridiculous. Doesn't work. Next.
Scholars have translated the papyrus Joseph claimed the Book of Abraham was translated from, and found that they have nothing to do with Abraham or anything contained in the book. The church now tries to claim that translate meant get inspiration from. Joseph also penciled in some parts of the papyrus.
Okay, so the penciling things in, like changing the picture to be what he had to go with his story, because you can see here the head was ripped off of the Thoth, or what's normally Thoth, and things of that nature. The other thing was, in the church saying, well, he didn't really need it to translate it, he just was going ahead and it was inspirational for him to be looking at this. Well, if he didn't need it to translate it, why did he spend like $2,400 on it, or get people to invest on it? Because $2,400 back then, you know, when they got this in 1835. 1835, land in Kirtland was running about, I think, $7 an acre, and then it was going up, which is another story why Joseph Smith got heavily into land speculation, ran out of money, and started the Kirtland Bank, which wasn't really a bank since they couldn't get a bank charter, etc., etc. So it went up. Anyway, so what? They could have bought between 100 and 300 acres of land, depending on the timing, for the price he paid for it. For something he didn't even need, in order just to have a revelation. So does that really make a lot of sense for people that are, you know, having money problems to start with? Okay. I'll also mention a couple of linguistic anachronisms that I noticed. First of all, you've got Abraham trying not to get sacrificed. And where is he? Ur of the Chaldees. Okay, well, the Bible's got that anachronism as well, because that's, you know, supposedly around 2000 BC, something like that. Well, if you do your history research, the Chaldeans came in about, you know, like 850 to 950 BC. You know, so they're only off by 1,000 years in the Genesis, and so Joseph Smith evidently got it from that, is what one could reasonably get out of that. Another thing, the Genesis record, you know, Abraham is not Abraham at this point, he's Abram. And he's Abram until after he's been through Egypt, comes out, and, you know, about the time they're having children or doing some circumcising or something of that nature, but not at the beginning of his journey before he even gets to Egypt. His name's Abram. But what happens? He prays for help there on the altar, and you hear, Abraham, Abraham, my name is Jehovah, and I've come down to save you. So Jehovah is calling him Abraham when Jehovah hadn't even changed his name to Abraham yet, and he'd been Abram for, he was Abram for, you know, several more years after this point. So just some more little screw ups in there. Another one is that he says that when he's talking about you know, the wife of Ham, Egyptus, which is also what they named their daughter, Egyptus, and they say Egyptus signifies Egypt, which means forbidden. From what I've read, the land that we call Egypt now was called Kemet, and or something else, but it wasn't called Egypt. And Egypt, by the way, is not an Egyptian word, it's a Greek word. And, you know, the Greek society wasn't real influential at that point all throughout the Mesopotamian region, as far as I've seen. It seems to me like, you know, maybe 700 BC they got going, or 600 BC a little bit, and expanding more like, you know, 300 and something BC around Alexander the Great time. I don't think even they were out there in time to teach Nephi how to pick up some Greek names, so that the Nephites heading for America in 600 BC would know how to say words like Jesus Christ or Timothy, the brother of 3rd Nephi, or even here, why is Yahweh calling himself Jehovah, speaking Greek in 2000 BC? Doesn't make a lot of sense. About like Joseph Smith's Egyptian alphabet that totally didn't match up with reality either. So, next video. Let's go to number 6.